Hola guys, this is your intelligence chapter. This one's not as long. There's a little bit part of it that is connected to methods. So knowing the bell curve and knowing how to find standard deviation and mean, all of this stuff is part of the intelligence chapter, but I'm not going to go over too much of it because it's already in your methods PowerPoint. Okay, so what is intelligence? What makes us intelligent or not so intelligent? So it is one of those definitions where everybody just has a different take on what is considered intelligent. Some people think that intelligence has to be a GPA or an SAT score, but a lot of times it can be about creativity and athleticism and being musically inclined. So different intelligences is different for every single person. So definition of intelligence, though, according to our textbook, is the ability to learn from our experiences. So trying not to repeat the same thing over and over again, especially our mistakes. Um, Learning how to solve problems, and then using knowledge to adapt to new situations. So, of course, during this whole quarantine thing, those of us that are trying to figure out how to do life and, exercise differently or entertain ourselves differently or do, homework and lesson plans differently, we're all trying to just to adapt to this new situation that none of us are really prepared for. And the fact that we're all functioning and be able to do it means that everybody is intelligent. So it is socially constructed. It can also be culturally specific. So certain cultures only believe that I have an intelligent child because this person gone to this school or has this test score or yada yada. Or my son or daughter is the best athlete, so they're the most intelligent. Or they have won a lot of prizes in their art, so then they're really intelligent. So everyone has just again a different definition. So reification is one of these like abstract words. I doubt they'll test you on it, but if they do, okay. Basically, it's viewing an abstract immaterial concept as if it was a concrete thing. So a lot of times we will say, her IQ is 120, but IQ really isn't like a thing. We should actually be saying that she scored a 120 on an intelligence test. So IQ is very abstract, but we're treating it as if it's an actual concrete thing. Okay, is intelligence one thing or several different abilities? So we use factor analysis, which we also will be using in our personalities chapter. It's pretty much clustering like-minded items. So some of you guys will say, oh, but I'm not intelligent because I'm bad at math. But it's kind of one of those things where if you're like in HL math, you're not bad at math because that's still a really high level math class. But let's say language arts is your thing, then that means when they're taking this assessment, they're going to cluster like-minded things. So if you're good at language arts, that means you're probably good at reading, writing, reading comprehension, word analysis, grammar. And so it's clustering all of those things. And so that's factor analysis. Or let's say you're really outgoing. So then you would be outgoing, probably extroverted, sociable, excitable. And so then those like-minded items go together. So Charles Spearman discovered the whole idea of a G factor or general intelligence. He basically said that if you test well in one area of the test, it's going to probably predict that you're going to test well in other areas. So if you are a fairly good student, you're probably a good student all across the board. You might have a weaker subject, but overall your GPA is fairly decent. If you're an athlete, just because you play basketball and that is your sport, you're probably going to be fairly decent at all the sports because you just have this athletic, gene in you, more so than someone that's not good at any sports. Or if you are a really good painter or drawing, you're probably going to be fairly decent at all the mediums. Excuse me. Or doing ceramics. Same thing with an instrument. If you can play the piano fairly well, you're probably going to be able to pick up other instruments fairly quickly. So that's basically saying you have a general intelligence that if you're good at one thing, you're probably good at most of the other things that are related to it. Okay, and then we have Thurstone. He's kind of a more obscure person. I don't know if they're going to ask you about him, but he believed in 7 primary mental abilities. So here's your list. I'm not going to read it to you guys, but he was trying to disprove Spearman's theory of the G factor, but then he ended up actually realizing that a lot of this did cluster, so then it actually did support a G factor. Okay, multiple intelligences. So we have Howard Gardner. So he disagreed with Spearman's G, instead came up with the concept of multiple intelligences. So he wasn't really supporting that if you were good at one thing, you're good at all the things. He was pretty much saying that, no, we all have our own form of intelligence, and it could be in any sort of category. So the way he discovered that was studying savants. And so a savant is a condition where a person has limited mental ability but is actually exceptional in one area. So in this movie, The Rain Man, I would say that I think he had supposedly like a low IQ, or he was on the spectrum, but he had this amazing ability to be able to do math and count numbers. And so the video I showed you guys in class was the video about the artist. Do you guys remember him? I'll just play a little bit.
Really proud to be starting this new series this morning, An Early Beautiful Memory, in which we will focus on the remarkable Stephen Wiltshire. From an early age.
Stephen Wiltshire. Remember him? He was the kid that was able to take a screenshot from memory of different landscapes and be able to draw it. So I think he was doing New York City, he was doing Tokyo, and so he has that amazing ability to do that. So according to Gardner's Multiple Intelligences, you could be visual spatial. So that basically means you're very good at remembering things visually. You're probably also good with spatial abilities, meaning that you can orient yourself with directions fairly quickly. Same thing with like packing items. You can pack things nicely and everything fits. If you're verbal linguistic, probably more of a language arts person. Logical, mathematical, bodily kinesthetic are probably my athletes. Musical rhythmic, these can be your dancers, your musical instruments. Interpersonal is you with somebody else, so you're pretty sociable. You can make friends easily. You can talk to anybody in a crowd. You don't really get nervous. Intrapersonal is within yourself, so you know yourself really well. And then nature is pretty much like you can grow fruit or vegetables in your garden, and you can keep all the plants alive. All right, and then we have Sternberg. Every time we see Sternberg, we want to think of a triangle. So the other time we have met him is in the social psych chapter for the theory of love. Remember, for theory of love, it was passion, commitment, and intimacy. So pick. So passion, intimacy, commitment, and that was a triangle. For intelligence chapter, he is this triangle. It is creative, analytical, and practical. So his 3 is CAP. Give me 1 second. My dogs are being naughty. Okay, my bad. All right, so then if you are creative, generalizing novel ideas, it doesn't just mean that you have to be creative with like art. It just, you can come up with new ideas. That still means you're a creative person. Be analytical, so academic, problem solving, practical, required for everyday tasks. And so this whole idea is called CAP. Okay, emotional intelligence, its ability to perceive, express, and understand and regulate our emotions. EQ used to also be called social intelligence. It kind of floats back and forth. Okay, so the person that came up with this was John Mayers. Think of the artist, even though it's not the musical artist, but he sings a lot of lovey, like emotional songs. Peter Salovey, and then David Caruso. So in order to have emotional intelligence, you have to be able to perceive emotions. So being able to recognize someone else's emotions in their faces. So kind of being attuned with their body language, their facial expressions, being able to kind of figure out, is this person feeling upset or happy or interested? And to kind of be able to read your parents' faces, your peers' faces is actually a really good sign of emotional intelligence. Okay, then understanding them. Do you know how to predict them? And then how they can change and blend. Can you predict that if you say something in a certain way, you're going to get a certain response from your mom, your dad, your significant other, your friends? If you can, that's actually a good sign. Also, can you actually manage your own emotions? So being able to not only express yourself, but also be able to regulate your own and manage them and not kind of, freak out every time. Be able to kind of keep yourselves calm, collected, and cool. Okay, and then be able to use your emotions to enable adaptive and creative thinking. Can you tap into someone else's emotions? So I would say people that are really good at marketing or like products, if you're able to appeal to your market, that is you being able to assess other people's emotions and what people would buy. And so that is actually a sign of emotional intelligence. Okay, so then brain size and intelligence, is there a link? There is a very small link to head size. So just because you have a bigger head does not mean you have a bigger brain. But they have said there's about a 0.4 correlation between actual brain size and your IQ score. Okay, so then how do we assess intelligence? So we have the father of intelligence testing, which is Binet, and then his friend Simon helped him. So they came up with the idea of mental age. Mental age, originally they were testing French students or French children. Binet's goal was not to label them. What he wanted to do was just make sure every kid had access to the appropriate education for their level. But then through his testing, what it is today, there is a lot of negative labeling and, placing kids in certain high level. Like even at our school, we have so many different levels of different classes and programs you can be in. And sometimes that can come with negativity, especially if you're not considered like the higher end. And so his original goal, though, was not to do that. So mental age is what a person of a particular person or age should know. So if you are 17, you should be able to perform at least at the 17-year-old level. Some of you guys will outperform that and you will think at a lot older. So when it comes to IQ, it really works for children. So like if you're 8, but you're testing at a 15-year-old level, like that's great. But if you're 20 and you're testing at like a 30-year-old level or a 50-year-old level, that doesn't really necessarily means you're intelligent or is a good thing. So we usually tend to use IQ testing, especially in the school system, at the younger ages and not into adulthood. Okay, so then here's just some of his formulas. I don't think they're going to make you calculate this, especially because there's no multiple choice this year, but just in case. So basically what you want to do is, here is the IQ formula. So it is mental age divided by chronological age times 100. And the person that came up with that was William Stern. Terman is going to get credit for the Stanford Binet test. So he basically ripped off Binet's theory and then created his own, but he at least he kept his name in there. So Stanford Binet test. So an 8-year-old has a mental age of 10. What is her IQ? So remember, just kind of going back to IQ, if you're going to draw the bell curve, okay, average IQ is going to be 100. 100. Okay, and then we have 1 standard deviation above and below the mean, 2 standard deviations above and below the mean, and then remember it goes into increments of 15. So this is 115, this would be 130, and then you're going to go backwards. This would be 85, 70, yada, yada. Okay, so she's 8. And she has a mental age of 10. So she thinks like a 10-year-old. So she's going to be above or below the bell curve? She's going to be above the bell curve, or above mean, because she's actually really intelligent. So she's going to be at 125. But let's say we have this kid. He's 12, but his mental age is 9. So he's 12, but he's thinking like a 9-year-old. So he's going to actually go below the mean. So then it's going to be 75. Then this boy has the mental age of 10, but his IQ is 200. So we know that he's super intelligent, and so his mental age is 10. What is his actual age? His actual age is 5, because that's why his IQ is so high. Okay, so to quick review, Binet and Simon are in charge of mental age, and they get credit for that. Terman gets credit for Stanford Binet, and then William Stern gets credit for the IQ formula. Okay, modern tests of mental abilities. So the most famous or most commonly used test now is the WAS. So it's going to be the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale. It has about 11 different subtests. It's good because it's going to tap into multiple things. It's not just math and language arts, but it's going to be like reasoning and spatial abilities, word blanks. Another spatial thing was, remember in the video we showed about Battle of the Brains? It was where you took these blocks and you had to be able to adjust them and then make them match the image that they give you. Sometimes people think that a Rubik's Cube can be a form of spatial intelligence, so they're going to have different ways to tap into that. The child version of this is going to be the WISC. Okay. All right, so this is what they're probably going to test you on mostly, is aptitude versus achievement. So the difference is an aptitude test is designed to predict future performance, its ability for that person to learn. So ideally the SATs, it's a standard aptitude test. Is the reason colleges use SAT scores is because they think that if you score really high on the SATs, it's predicting that you are going to perform well in their institution. So then they're going to let you into their college because then you're going to make them look good. Whereas achievement is what we're mostly used to, like in the school system. It's designed to assess what you have already learned. So all of our AP tests, our finals, our unit tests, those are all considered achievement tests. Okay. The difference, so let's say we talk about the driving test. The actual driving test is more of an aptitude test because it's predicting how you're going to be on the road after you get your license. The permit test is more of an achievement test because you're studying the laws that you should already know and that you've learned, and then so you're performing on the permit test. Okay, so then tests must be standardized, reliable, and valid. Again, a reminder, please make sure you guys know the bell curve. Again, I don't know how important it is going to be for this year. I do think one of your FRQs is going to be a methods because that's what they've said. I don't know how they're going to use that. I don't know if they're going to apply it to intelligence testing or something completely different. But just knowing all the graphs is important to have with you guys when you are taking that exam. Okay, just a quick review of the questions. So the mean is 550. So every time you get the mean, you want to put it in the middle. Standard deviation is 50. So you're going to add it to the mean above and below. So you have 600, 650, 7. You have 500, 450. What percentage of the scores fall between 500 and 600? Okay, so it's 34 plus 34. So the answer is 68. Okay, Flynn Reflect, yay, we're all getting smarter because you're all flying to the top. Okay, again, reliability, there are two ways to test reliability. The first definition, though, for reliability is it needs to be consistent. So when something is consistent, it's considered reliable. So if you're standing on a scale and one day it tells you you're 140 and the next day 190 and the next day 92, that is not consistent and that is not a reliable scale. It needs to be around the same. So like 140, 142, 139, 144. No, well, that's kind of, you might have eaten a little bit more on that day or that week, but like 141, 142, 140, 141, more consistent. Okay, two ways to test that is split halves and test retest. Split halves is basically splitting the test in half. You guys should be able to score the same amount correct around on all the evens versus all the odds. If you get 100% of all the evens, but you miss all the odds, that test isn't reliable. Test retest is basically what you scored today. If I was to give you a test next week without any studying, you should kind of score around the same. If you took the SATs today versus next Saturday, or I don't know what day today is anymore, you kind of are going to be scoring around the same if you didn't do any sort of extra assistance. Okay, validity is measuring what it's supposed to measure. So it's not about consistency. So two types of validity. One is content. It should tap to the pertinent behavior. So your AP Psych exam should just have AP Psych questions. If it's testing you on math or chemistry or physics, then it's not going to be a valid test. Predictive validity is, again, can it predict future performance? Some people have argued against the SATs, saying that no, that actually does not have validity, because a lot of you guys do really well in school and you might not have gotten a good score on the SATs, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to perform poorly in college. The driving test, again, if you missed one on the driving test, you're probably a decent driver right now. Okay, so does intelligence change over time? So kind of the argument is, do we get smarter? Do we lose our intelligence? So like we talked about before, it's more about the type of intelligence. So when it comes to crystallized versus fluid, crystallized intelligence increases as you get older. So that's basically accumulated knowledge. But fluid intelligence slows down as you get older. So the speed of how you process. So my fluid intelligence is a lot lower than yours because I'm older. But I probably have a more solidified crystallized intelligence because I just lived a longer life than you guys have. But you're way faster at processing than us old people. Okay, test bias. Do tests discriminate? Yes. Unfortunately, with standardized testing, it does. Maybe not on purpose, but it does have a disadvantage towards people from low or poor socioeconomic statuses and foreign-born. And so there is a cultural bias and a stereotype threat. Cultural biases is, let's say you weren't born here and there is an idiom on the exam. Just it's part of the question. It's not even the answer to the question. And we talked about this in class. So if people say things like, the pot calls the kettle black, or the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, someone's tree, it's a dime a dozen, knock on wood. Like if you never grew up speaking that way and that part of it is on the exam just as part of the story or part of the question stem, you're going to maybe miss it, and that will be biased against you because you don't speak that way because you're not maybe from here, or it's not part of your culture that you have grown up with. Okay, and then there's something called stereotype threat. This is a self-confirming concern that one will be valued based on a negative stereotype. This is very similar to self-fulfilling prophecy. So for a lot of women, you know, they've kind of been told a lot of times, hey, girls aren't good at math and science. Stick with language arts. You know, stick with emotions. Or, you know, guys, you're not good with language arts or verbal linguistics, or you're not emotional, or, you know, if you are not Asian, you're not good at math, blah, 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 right? So all these negative stereotypes. So the experiment was that when they put women in rooms with just women and they took a math or science test, they actually outperformed than when they were placed in a room full of men. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, if I already go in there thinking, well, I'm a girl and I'm not good at math, and here's all these men, I'm probably going to be nervous, and then I might fulfill that on my own prophecy, and I may be threatened by that stereotype and not perform well. So end of this chapter. So when it comes to intelligence, just remember there's different forms of it. Everyone's idea of intelligence is different. Definitely know the bell curve, and then also just know that there is a test bias. All right, guys, have a wonderful day.